Good morning, everyone. It is time for us to begin our webinar today for the Accelerated Training for Illinois Manufacturing Program. Today we're going to be talking about managing employer partnerships, and if you have not had the opportunity to download the files, they are in the lower left-hand corner in the file pod marked 910. If you have problems hearing on your computer speakers during the course of the call, you may dial into 1-866-821-1611. And as a reminder, if you signed in as a guest or if you have multiple people on your call, please type the names of the folks into the chat pod so that we can make sure that everybody is hearing these webinars that needs to be hearing them. We will be recording this and posting this on the ATIM guide, and we will be getting started here right away. All right. Today on our call, we have our guest speakers, Steve Stewart, who is the Director of HR from Excel Foundry. Steve, if you'd like to say hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And Jim Nelson from the Illinois Manufacturers Association is joining us on the call as well. Jim, would you like to say good morning?
Good morning, everyone. Good to be back with you again.
And helping us in, as always, we have Chelsea Jones, Natasha Telger, and Lacey Pollock on our call on the backside, helping us make sure that we catch all of your questions and make sure that we get everything working properly. So as we get started, today our topics are going to be about outreach to employers, communicating the employer role and requirements, as well as identifying work experience opportunities and adding employers to the ATIM team, making sure that the employer job postings and planned placements are working properly, and then communicating the ATIM competencies. Again, just to take a look at our big picture with Illinois WorkNet, we're still on the online outreach and application section of our guide here, but we are working toward the end goal within the next few webinars. So this morning, our first topic is on outreach. And what I would like to talk to you about is the fact that we do have some tools available on the ATIM guide for outreach, and we do have the flyer down in the chat pod, in the file pod in the lower right-hand corner. So there is a PDF version, and on the guide there is a Word version that you can personalize with your location or the information that is about your particular region. So, looking at the website, we have some tools available for you on the website. We have Be an ATIM Employer, we have Learn More about the ATIM program, and then we have a second spot for being an ATIM employer. And then on our ATIM guide, under the Getting Started section, we have the area for reaching out to employers with some guides about how to reach out to them, the PDF item, as well as the talking points for the press release. So what I'd like to do right now is talk a little bit about being able to distribute the flyer to employers. So it has a link on it for the employer outreach page, and a suggestion would include that the workforce investment boards might want to engage organizations and agencies to help disseminate this program information. And as I said just a moment ago, that the flyer is customizable, and so that you can help by addressing those particular flyers to maybe those different groups. Maybe the economic development agencies in your area might want to help promote the program to employer members, or employer partners might want to disseminate information to fellow employers and people within the community. So some additional items include attend chamber meetings or ask to include the flyer in a mailing or on their website or in an email blast. And then you can also contact regional manufacturing groups, and Jim might be able to speak just a moment about reaching out to those groups?
There are a number of groups around the state of Illinois that focus on manufacturing in particular. For those in the Collar County areas, there's the Valley Industrial Association out in Aurora, which covers several hundred manufacturers in Will, DuPage, Kane, DeKalb, and a little bit into McHenry County. The Tooling Manufacturing Association is another large organization in the northern Collar County areas, and they do have some statewide reach that you might be able to tap in as well. For the Rockford area, by and large, it's both the Rockford area Aeronautical Network or Aerospace Network, as well as RADEC, which is the economic development entity up there. In the central region, that is so huge, and there really isn't a manufacturer's organization per se that I'm aware of, but there are very effective chambers of commerce, Rotaries, Kiwanis, etc., that can be tapped into as well. In the southwest region, the Southern Illinois Employers Association, headed up by Mike Walters out of Wood River, is a very effective group, and they are pulling together the beginnings of their STEM Learning Exchange and pulling in the St. Louis Regional Chamber of Commerce and a number of other entities down there to be part of that. So there are a good number of groups out there that you can take advantage of, and it's just a matter of getting that outreach out there and starting to build that relationship that is going to really make the difference in the long run.
And if you need to contact those particular organizations, I'm sure Jim would give you an introductory sort of paragraph that you might be able to include in an email to those organizations.
Very happy to do so.
Another couple opportunities that you might have is to check into your LinkedIn connections to see which manufacturers to whom you might have a connection. You can post bullets from the press releases on your social media outlets. You might want to also contact local radio stations to try to create some public service announcements. And then ask your WIB members and other board members, if you're not on the WIB, maybe your community college, to share the information with their manufacturing connections. So here I'd like to have our poll come up and ask you to answer that. And Mike, I hear that you've joined us. Are you able to talk to us right now?
I can hear you, but I cannot see you, so I'm following along as best I can.
Okay, we are on the employer role, slide number 9.
Got it.
Could I add one other item?
Sure.
Each of the applicants put into their application a core group of manufacturers that they could work with. Another suggestion would be to use that group as part of an outreach plan in both directions, in terms of direction of those individuals who are supplying that manufacturer with raw material, and if they are a process type of manufacturer who does part of a end product, say they build engines for Chrysler Belvedere, they can reach down to the next person in that process and encourage them also to participate in the ATIM program.
Great. That's a great suggestion. All right. I'm going to hide this poll right now. And then I'd like to introduce Steve Stewart again from Excel. And Steve, I understand you have a great story about working with area high schools to help them understand today's manufacturing needs. Could you share that story with us just a moment?
You bet. I would be happy to. Yeah, let me just share. Excel Pounder Machine is located in Pekin, Illinois, so we're just down in the Peoria region. We do have a group that is meeting. It's called the Specialized Manufacturing Group. And what's interesting about that group is it's very diverse of individuals. We have local manufacturing companies. We have educators. our community college, our high schools. The DCEO is also a part of our specialized manufacturing group, our local workforce and career link organizations, our Economic Development Council, and also some city representatives. So there's a very diverse group, and one of the things that we're working on is trying to get every local high school in our communities to have a manufacturing partner. And just to share a story here that we've been involved with here at Excel Foundry is a local community high school, Midwest Central High School. At the point they had welding was a part of a program they had, but they did not have any metalworking in their high school to be able to do any training. So we have installed a lathe, an engine lathe in the high school, and what we are doing is working in conjunction with the teacher and the administration there on helping them develop a curriculum, and even as far as trying to look at how do you operate a class, which would be a shop class, into like a business organization. So we're working with the teacher. They're very open to changes. They're very open to suggestions about at the start of the class, typically the students come in and they do take attendance and do announcements. They're looking at maybe doing things differently, not making announcements and not doing attendance right away, but just making sure that the kids know and understand that a part of this class is that you need to be on class on time, and that they sign in and they track attendance just like you would in an organization. So doing things a little bit different, but they've been very open. We've been working with the NIMS, which is the metalworking skills curriculum that we're working with them to put into their high schools. So there's been a lot of partnership with them, and I think it's been a neat partnership, and I think we need to do more of that. So I would encourage to see what we can do to help fill that gap.
That's a really good idea. And as we move forward, what I'd on with the employer in this ATIM program, they need to offer input about the training for their company as well as the core competencies. They need to provide consideration for participants when job openings are available. They need to promote the importance of soft skills on the job, and then they need to also provide to help guide them through the training program and help them show the ins and outs of the difference between class C as the role of that employer.
Well, when you mentioned assign a mentor to the trainee, that is absolutely essential. As most of you know, in manufacturing, it can be the big equipment, very difficult, complex things they got to do. So I think that's very important of assigning a mentor to each person. I think the training is a key thing that we have to provide to those individuals. Typically, to get somebody trained, they're only going to do as good as what the mentor is doing to help them, and as well as the training is that we're providing to them. So we as a manufacturer, I think, has a large stake in this and making sure that we offer the right training, very effective training, as well as making sure that we put them with a mentor that can help guide them. And we need to give them good feedback on letting them know the things that they're doing well and the things that they need to improve on.
All right, so Steve, what sort of benefits do you see for your company by participating in the ATIM program?
Well, I think number one is we're going to be able to definitely see the talent come through the pipeline. If we are able to see individuals come through that this might be somebody that could be a long-term good candidate for our companies. I think it also engages us with our local community of making sure that we're communicating the right message about the manufacturing jobs. I think that's going to be very important. And I think providing that, as I said earlier, the good training to those to the new employees, and there's probably going to be a cost advantage for us as well.
Yeah, I believe so. So what ATIM really does is they provide industry-recognized skill training and education along with internships and on-the-job training opportunities so employers will know that trainees are ready for work on day one. They'll give employers the opportunity to influence the content and quantity of training made available in their region, and they're being provided a no-risk chance to see potential employees in the workplace through various options of work-based learning, as well as matching promising trainees and successful completers to specific on-the-job training placements and various job postings. So, Steve, if somebody came to you with a proposal like this, would you jump on the chance?
Yeah, I mean, it would need to be explained and understood, but I think there's, with where we're at as manufacturers, with the skills gap out there and what we see coming ahead of us with all the baby boomers retiring, I think it's, for us to look in the future, it's a must. We've got to engage in these activities and partner up with our educators, with our state, and try to all work together at trying to close the skills gap that we have in the manufacturing sector.
All right. Mike would like to make a quick point on credentials.
Yeah, just to follow up with Steve's point, it was subtle in there. I want to make sure everyone gets that message. Steve said, if it's explained and understood. What we're finding is many medium-sized, smaller-sized manufacturers may not understand what comes with an MSSC credential or a NIMS credential or an AWS credential. But when you explain to them, well, here's what they will be qualified to do or will have learned and have the skill they will have when they have that credential, they all smile and nod and say, oh, yes, that's exactly what we're looking for. But if you just throw out MSSC, you may get a blank look back. But if you explain what MSSC means, then you have their attention. So if you get that blank look, that just tells you you need to take it to the next level. And it probably tells us we might want to retool our outreach a little bit to talk more about what these credentials entail rather than just throw the credential itself out there. But that's a conversation for down the road. But for immediate purposes, just be mindful that you may have to go a little bit deeper and explain what all these things actually offer.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So, Jim, what sort of benefits do you see for companies that participate in the ATIM program?
Well, you can see up on am I on? Okay. As you can see on the slide, there is a number of benefits, but let me just make a general comment. The feedback I get from manufacturers, whether it's in the Chicago area or in the Deep South, is that people lack enough skills to work in the automated systems that we work today in manufacturing. And they're also very concerned about those critical soft skills of showing up on time and being properly attired, et cetera, working as a team. So those are really very important employer benefits if we can move the needle on those items. It will help close the skills gap because we are providing the foundational skills necessary for every vertical of manufacturing. And all of you should have, as part of that MSSC discussion that we've all had, I believe I've had it with all of the regions, you should have received the 4-page syllabus of the MSSC areas of focus in safety, quality and measurement, manufacturing processes, and maintenance awareness. utilize those, and you'll really see employers' faces light up when they read through that. When I show it to manufacturers, within a couple of minutes, somebody will say, "Where has this been?" So, reducing turnover, having someone train potential employees in those foundational skills that shrinks an employer's job-specific training requirements goes a long way. And bringing people with work histories, and that's one of the big things that the ATIM program focuses on, are those individuals who, many of whom have a solid work history, who through no fault of their own are out of work through a relocation of the business, through a succession issue where the business ended up shuttering. These are people who are more apt to have good work histories that, with some training, can be a valuable member of the workforce.
Great.
And Dee, I would just like to stress Jim's point about the soft skills is, from an employer standpoint in manufacturing, I mean, that is absolutely huge. The people that we work with every day, so when we're recruiting, when we're interviewing candidates, I mean, looking at the candidates and who they are, how they treat other people, just their general attitude is very, very important to us. And, that's one of the soft skills is one of those things that we really got to look for and address up front. Because when we look at reducing turnover, that's typically going to be the area that's going to reduce most of our turnover. We can do a great job of training, and we can train the person how to run it, but we can't train them on their attitude and how they treat other people. So those are the soft skills that really need to be hit up front, and make sure that those are addressed in some type of training and incorporate those into the beginning process. But I think that's a very important point from a manufacturer side.
Great. Now, Steve, you were also mentioning something when we had a discussion the other day about closing the skills gap. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. There's many, I guess there's a number of different ways that we just know that's going to be a huge issue coming up. And I feel that, as I just mentioned, the soft skills is probably going to be one of the key areas. Even though it says the skills gap, the hard skills are very important, and we've got to be working with our local high schools and with this ATIM grant and making sure that that the training is going to be very solid, that we're going to get the technical skills. But I think in order to completely close that skills gap, we're going to have to do an exceptionally good job of trying to identify training that goes along with the soft skills. Easier said than done. I know it's not easy, but we're going to have to come up with ways that we can really get the message to individuals about how important soft skills are to us in the private sector. So you got the hard skills and the soft skills, and closing the skills gap includes both of those, not just one.
Correct. Now, when we talk about training the new employees at a reduced cost, we've got some wage reimbursements of up to 90% available for on-the-job training participation. We've got some continuous improvement to assure quality candidates for the workforce. And then because of this program, we've got some minimal paperwork requirements. So that's some key features for the employers. And again, reducing turnover. A conversation that I had was, and I think it was with Steve, turnover can cost as much as 100%, and that's just something that employers don't want to take the risk on. And by having this program help pay for some of that training for them, that will help make them more comfortable in their job, it really helps reduce the turnover in the long run.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Go ahead.
Jim, do you see any other benefits for manufacturing employers should they choose to participate in this program?
Well, some of those benefits are going to be long-term because, we're not going to hit everybody retiring in the same year. So, the benefits of long-term, of also developing relationships with the training providers to provide ongoing training once that person is in a job, and following and adopting career pathways that employers already have within their businesses. That increases the skills and the ability and the overall ability in terms of cross-training to other types of skills during the employment engagement. Those could be, additional long-term benefits to the ATIM program.
Great. All right, let's take our next opportunity to talk about identifying work experiences and opportunities. So which one of these training opportunities is best? And Mike, we're on slide 13.
Thank you.
So as we're going through here, we're talking about the different training opportunities. We're going to give everybody just a moment to complete the poll here. Don't have too many people answering the question right now. We're going to give it just another moment. All right, we're going to close this poll and move on to the next slide. So part of our big picture flow is the fact of finding jobs, and that's one of the most important opportunities. But along with the jobs are the workplace learning opportunities that need to go into the mix as well. And the three items that we have is intern positions, work experience, and on-the-job training. And what we need to caution you about is that in a recent court decision out east, it was determined that unpaid internships were not legal. It remains to be seen how that will play out right now in Illinois, but we need to be very careful with recommending any sort of intern positions. And Mike, would you like to address that a little bit further?
Sure. I mean, the gray area is unpaid. If you're going to pay the intern, you have no problem at all. The only question is on the legality going forward of unpaid internships. It's not clear that the court decision out east even impacts Illinois at all, but our folks are looking at it. So just to be safe at this point, plan on doing paid work experience or paid internships, that is, and we'll give you additional guidance as soon as we have a clear understanding of what's going on. If it remains a gray area, we'll deal with that as we go forward.
So with these opportunities, this is where the personalized training plan becomes so important, because each individual situation for wage and UI is different, and IDES will look at individuals on a case-by-case basis. So what you might want to look at is for paid work-based learning, whether it's work experience or an internship, we need to be mindful of disrupting individuals' UI benefits, unemployment insurance benefits, as that will be a disincentive for them to participate. One possible strategy is to pay them up to the point that the UI benefits will not be impacted. Then whatever we're paying them will be on top of their UI, which will certainly help to be an incentive for them to participate. So as we're looking at the intern opportunities, again, we need to be careful if you're going to be offering an unpaid internship, and we're going to seek further counsel on that from the powers that be. So we just need to be careful with the interns. As far as work experience, the definition is a planned, structured learning experience that takes place in a workplace for a limited amount of work. Work experience may be paid or unpaid as appropriate. Let's go with paid. A work experience workplace may be in the private for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, or the public sector. It provides a person with the opportunity to gain the skills and knowledge necessary to perform a job, including work habits and behaviors, and which may be combined with classroom or other training. It can be similar to on-the-job training. Its goal is employment or the ability to move up to an OJT position. It still requires in-depth discussion with employers, but it is a great starting point for someone with basic manufacturing competencies, and the client could participate in a work experience component while also being in classroom training. So now, on-the-job training is training by the employer that is provided to a paid participant while engaged in a job that provides knowledge or skills essential to the full and adequate performance of the job, reimbursement to the employer of up to 90% of a wage for that participant, for the extraordinary costs of providing the training and additional supervision related to the training, and is limited in duration as appropriate to the occupation for which the participant is being trained, taking into account the content of the training, prior work experience of the participant, and the service strategy of the participant as appropriate. You also want to use the competencies checklist that follow the client throughout the life of the training to determine the client's suitability for the OJT. You're also in consultation with the employer determining the required competencies from one or more of the 5 sets of the INAM terminal objectives. You also want to add other competencies if needed by the employer, but ensure that they will be included in the OJT by the trainer and that they are documentable, demonstratable, and measurable. Would Jim or Mike or Steve like to add anything to those 3 opportunities that we have?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in. One of the hazy areas is what is an internship versus what is work experience, and Dee laid out for you some of the distinctions. Very common for folks to throw out the term internship as meaning any kind of work-based learning opportunity. So it may just be, may come down to what we actually call the placement that we end up making. It's certainly not clear that if the WIA program is setting up a work experience opportunity for someone, that this internship ruling has anything at all to do with that. So again, the safe thing to do is to make sure it's paid, but it's very unclear as to what the reach of that internship ruling is. So just be mindful when you're making these placements that, if you're calling it an internship, is it really an internship, and is it more work-based learning? So just more confusion for the masses here.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience about the issue of placing ATIM participants with employers who have laid off workers.
That is a very good question. OJT cannot be used to replace laid-off workers. The question is, there's really no definition that I'm aware of on how far back that goes. Certainly when in the middle of the big economic meltdown where practically everyone had laid off people, DOL ran a program specifically targeted to provide on-the-job training for companies to incent them to hire folks if they were kind of on the fence for moving forward. And many of you out there participated in that program. So there's no real clear ruling that I'm aware of that says, well, a layoff since when? So as long as you are not using OJT placements or work experience or any kind of placements in ATIM to do the work specifically done by people that were laid off, you should be okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Jim also made a point that IDES can approve the training so that UI benefits are uninterrupted. So that's something that you need to check locally in your area with the area IDES offices.
Well, and to follow up on that also, we want a coordinated response at the state level from IDES on that, and we are working on that. This is WIA approved training. I mean, it's the WIA program is funding it. DCO, as the state's WIA administrator, is administering the program. So if anyone gets caught up at a local IDS UI staffer wondering, is this really WIA training? Yes, it really is. And if you have any static at all with that, please let us know immediately, because we're working with our state partner IDES at the director's office level to make sure that everyone over there understands that this is blessed by the WIA program.
Good, 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 good. All right. Moving on to communicating ATIM competencies. We have another poll question here. So what role does the employer play in the competencies? All right. Looks like we've got some good responses here. We're going to hide this poll. And move forward. So our big picture again, each of these areas has their own lists of competencies that we need to follow, but what competencies might be needed for specific employers need to be included into the list of the training. So as we look at the core competencies, we want to make sure that we are reviewing the list of tasks or job duties that are performed by most of the related classifications of jobs, and we'll go through them briefly moving forward. As you are working with the employers, we want to ensure that any specific items that are not already included within the list is added and addressed either in classroom or in an OJT situation. So when you have the core competencies and the employers, you want to begin with the targeted employers, meet with each employer to determine current and projected openings in targeted occupations, and then you want to determine the core competencies for those occupations by consulting with the employers, and then starting with a double check of the list from INAM of the terminal objectives to ensure that you are using a common framework and language. You want to add any additional competencies based on the employer's input using a similar writing style to the INAM terminal objectives. And you want to ensure that employer competencies are kept on file. You want to use the competency data from all targeted employers to determine what competencies are most common for each occupation and should be shared across all the training plans, and or which ones are unique to different employers and require customization. Always be on the lookout for updates and revisions and for feedback from the employers about those competencies. And then you want to make sure that you're using the occupational categories as a guide when you're working with the employers for the basic areas that we're using within our program, within the ATIM program. And a crosswalk is very useful for working with employers and for tracking and categorizing the occupations and core competencies. We have employer information, occupational title, core competency checklists that are identified by the employer and may not be on a specific list or any list, or may cross over from one occupation to another. And we do have the core competency crosswalk in a draft format in the file pod list on the lower left-hand corner. So this is the basic competencies. And Jim, Mike, or Steve, if you want to jump in on any of these slides as we go through them, please feel free to add some comments here. So this is the ones for the industrial maintenance or the mechatronics, which will tell the employer what are the basic things that these individuals will be learning as we're moving forward. Are there any things that they need to add to them? This slide shows the one for machining, same process. If there is anything that needs to be added for the specific employer, they can do that within the training guidelines.
Can we back up for a second?
Sure.
Let's back up to industrial maintenance, because I just want to make the point for folks that as of right now, there is not a nationally adopted credential for mechatronics. Several organizations are working on them, but none have produced a nationally portable, industry-driven credential per se yet. We're working on that very quickly. So if you know, in machining and welding in MSSC, you have the reference at the bottom there to sit for the NIMS test or sit for the MSSC credential. You won't find that in mechatronics. So if you were looking for it, it's not there yet.
And is nationally, is that being worked on, Jim?
Yes. In fact, the NIMS folks are working on it. North American Rockwell is working on one, and there are 2 or 3 other organizations. Not sure exactly who's going to get to the finish line first, but I am told that the NIMS credential should be available under the NIMS banner by the end of calendar 13.
Right. So then machining, those are relatively standard, industry standard CNC and the different things related to machining.
Yes.
Welding is AWS. There's a number of standards, as well as there are some different standards for warehousing and logistics. So we've got another poll question here. Why are employers essential to the ATIM team? Very good. We've got a lot of participation on this poll. And we're going to hide this poll now. And Mike, I'm coming to you on slide 27. I'd like to ask you why it's so important for employers to be a part of the ATIM team.
Sure. We want to jump into that right now?
Yes.
Okay, sure. Well, if you go back to the basic tenet of what we're trying to do, this is a demand-driven model. So without employer participation, we don't know what the demand is. So the employers have to tell us the specific skill sets they need. So that will help us identify how we want to target our funds for training. So they need to tell us what skill sets they need training for, any particular type of training that they want their people to have, occupations that are involved, and the number of occupations and when they expect those to be available. Without all those variables, we're doing some form of train and pray. It might be a little more refined than what we may have done in the past, but ideally, we would know an answer to each one of those elements to better provide a good product to the manufacturers and the employers when our people come out of the system. So basically, when they give us that information, we can, let me rephrase that, to incent them to provide us with that information, what we're asking them to do is help us help them. We can provide a better product to them if they participate in this process. Especially, one of the complaints that is common is that the folks that our system sends over to them, either from the workforce side or the education side, are deficient in some way. Well, what we're asking them to do is help us address those deficiencies either by more targeted information for training, and in this case with ATIM, they even have the opportunity to help us determine who is suitable to even enter the training. So by building in the opportunity for them to participate as we go through this process, that helps them own the product that comes out with us, so that hopefully they are happier with the product because they had a hand in helping determine who gets in and also what kind of training they got at the end of the day.
Great. Let's talk about increasing productivity and quality of products. Mike, do you want to address how this plays into the employer's return on investment?
Well, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, what matters to an employer? It's increased profitability. And how do you get to increased profitability? Well, you either improve your production or you find efficiencies in cost somewhere in the operation. Those are the two of the main ways. So what is it that ATIM can do that can help them increase profitability? Well, if they have better trained workers, they're more productive. If we can get them workers that don't suffer from the soft skill issues that Steve and Jim have spoken to already, they have a more productive line and more efficient line because they're not dealing with extraneous issues and people are on the line doing the work that they need to do. If you have the soft skill issues, then people are not on the line. So what we're working toward here is having folks that have the right skills but also show up to work and are productive when they're at work. And that speaks directly to that final goal of profitability. So again, if they can help us screen who comes into the program and give us good information on what kind of training we need to provide, and then work with us on placement opportunities for work-based learning and then job posting, they should be getting essentially hand-picked and hand-trained people that meet their need. And I don't know of a better way for them to have the opportunity to increase their profitability and productivity than the model that we're trying. And Steve and Jim, I would love if you had any comments to add to that or have anything that might be helpful as folks go through the process here.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
No, Jim, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, folks, when you look at job training in manufacturing, understand that to really train a quality machinist from someone who walked in with no skills whatsoever, it can take up to a full year. And during that year, the employer is pulling off some of his better employees to train that individual. So the more training that we can do utilizing, you know, the community college network, private sector training providers, etc., to fulfill those training tasks really benefits the employer's bottom line. And when a person comes in and they have, you know, been through a training, that in itself shrinks the training module of the employer, and as close as we can get that training that the employer still has to do to job specific, the sooner that individual becomes a productive member of that workforce instead of a drain on the resources of that workforce. The same goes with soft skills, that we really want people who enjoy doing this type of work because that translates into a better quality product at the end of the day. If we have people who are going through the training because, you know, gee whiz, I just need a paycheck, I don't really care about whether I'm a good machinist or a good welder or what have you, those are folks that aren't going to last very long, and whether or not we're making a wise investment in that individual at that point is something that is certainly debatable. So I just wanted to add those two things to the thought process. One, we want want to utilize the faculties of the community college system, the private training provider network as best we can to shrink that employer's training module. But at the same time, we really want to identify people who are developing a passion for manufacturing. Steve?
Wow, Jim, you are spot on. That was excellent. I wish I would have recorded that, what you shared.
Recorded.
Because, okay. But, Jim is so right that, to increase productivity and the quality of the products and anything else, our bottom line, it all revolves around people. And the better job we do up front in selecting the right people to enter into these opportunities for training is huge for us. And if we can shorten that training time, Jim was exactly right. I mean, it takes almost a year for the CNC, depending on which machine it is. It can take up to a year to really allow that person where he's really functioning and doing a fantastic job. That's why turnover cost is huge for us. When you think you paid somebody for a year and then they didn't work out and you're doing that all over again. So benefits and wages and pulling off our good people to train, there is a huge cost. So productivity, quality, cost to our bottom line, this is a great opportunity. The ATIM grant it's a great opportunity for us to pool our resources together, to pull companies together in the regions, and to be able to work together with our local community colleges and other training areas to make this the best for our region.
So basically, Jim, by telling somebody about the cutting down on the turnover cost and saving them the training dollars, that's how we convince potential employer partners, or it's one of the ways that we convince potential training employer partners that it's a win-win situation for them.
Sure, and a lot of that, the way you put it, Jeannie, is up front. Once we get this program established, employers will tell other employers, hey, you should try this program. It works.
And a lot of times when one person hears about something, they share it with their partner in an organization. So this program might just spread like wildfire through, especially if we get into organizations like the Valley Industrial Association or some of the other organizations that Jim mentioned.
Right, and all of the STEM learning exchanges are going to include each of the regions, the ATIM regions, as part of their STEM learning exchanges. So that network will be there. They are building out networks as well. So it's going to be, there's some work to be done, to be sure, but I think the rewards are going to be outstanding.
Great, great. Let's move on to our next area of conversation. We're going to be talking about employer job postings and planned placements. What this boils down to is our regional dashboards, and we have these set up by region, and the participants is information that you can see to see if there's any intervention needed, and for job placements, it's a way to see what job opening forecasts look like for the region and how your placements are going. Right now, we have these are screen shares from the wireframe. They're not quite ready for publication yet, but we will be getting them up very shortly. So what happens is you will be able to enter the information, or the employer partner will be able to put the information in, and you will be able to see what's going on to make sure that there's a good fit for both the employers and the trainees, especially to help them with planning the work-based learning opportunities and to help them with job postings for potential employers. And then this is the sheet where once the job is put in, it will show you what kind of positions are available, whether it's an internship, a full-time position, or whether it's on-the-job training position. So you'll be able to pull this report and have that available for your case managers to use. And in the job posting section, we have where people will be able to post actual job openings. And this is still in wireframe format. It will be coming out shortly. But this is where it pays to have everybody working as a team to make sure that the trainees are on track or off track, and that all of the partners are working together to make this work in a positive fashion. And then last but not least, we have our dashboard that will show you a compilation of the jobs forecasted, the actual openings, and when you actually have placements taking place. Now, this one is also still in wireframe format. Now, we do have a couple of other webinars coming up. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. we're talking about career plan. On the 12th, we're talking about creating your personalized training program. And then next week, we have a technical assistance webinar, as well as talking about classroom training and national certifications. And last but not least, we have our follow-up and reporting. And as new items are coming up, we will let you know about the components coming out by email so that you can attend a webinar on how this will show up. We do have a couple of questions from the audience that we need to address. And as we're doing that, if you can take a look at our closing polling questions, let me direct these questions to our esteemed guests on the call. We have two questions back to the pay with the UI. And one was, even if they are being paid in OJT or work experience, will that work with their UI? And that is for WIA approved training and UI. I think we need to get the clarification on those two items specifically, but we will post all of this information in our FAQ section. Another person asked, will someone be getting back to us about the paid workplace learning not affecting UI benefits? We just talked about that. And last but not least, we have another question. If I am not mistaken, under WIA, the worksite with OJT is the employer of record, and so the participant is employed, and this would certainly affect UI. Can somebody address that, or is that all getting lumped in together?
No, Dee, I can address that.
Okay.
You're right. The distinction is under OJT, the manufacturer will be the employer of record, and that will certainly impact UI. The issue is that if they're going into OJT, they essentially, for all intents and purposes, hopefully, have found permanent employment, because the idea is that you go into OJT, it's not a temporary thing. You go into OJT, and if you successfully complete training, then you are retained. Now, if you are a bad employee and don't show up on time, you can be let go, of course. But OJT is, for all intents and purposes, intended to be permanent employment. Now, the work-based learning, work experience or internship, or anything short of OJT where the employer of record is not the manufacturer, where it's the WIA program itself, that's where you have to be careful in how much money is paid to that individual. IDS will not offer a blanket statement on how much you can do or anything like that, because each individual person has a unique set of circumstances. So they will look at each person on a case-by-case basis. So that's why earlier when we talked about the personalized training plan being so vital in this, what you're going to have to do is work with your UI representative in your local IDS office and say, okay, for John Doe, here is his situation. Here's why he's getting UI. Here's how far along in the process of benefits he is. And then you can determine, working with them, how much money that person can earn without jeopardizing their UI. Now, if the person is willing to forego UI and then have a paycheck on the work experience coming in, that's great. But in most cases, what my experience is telling me, and Steve, you may you should know this more than I firsthand. My experience has been in talking with folks that they will be happy to go into training or start looking for a job when their UI runs out. So their first priority in many cases is maintaining UI benefits to the extent possible. So what we're trying to figure out a way here is how can we not disincent people to participate in the program, but still get them the training they need. So that's something you'll have to finesse on a case-by-case basis with each person with the UI representatives in your area.
Thanks, Mike. That brings us to the end of our webinar today. We have no other questions coming in from the audience right now. If anybody, Jim, would you like to offer a last comment about working with employers?
I think the key to working with employers is understanding that training produces an input to a manufacturing process. And at the end of the day, whether you're a local workforce agency, if you're a private training provider, or even a community college, that at the end of the day, the employer is the customer. And we are creating solidly skilled workers and inputs to that process. They are every bit as important as the raw materials that are used. They're every bit as important as the energy. They are the people who take those things and make products that for consumption by the public. So letting employers lead somewhat in determining what works best and what needs tweaking is going to produce dividends far beyond any expectations as we move forward in this. Steve, I was just wondering if you would agree with that or want to amplify that.
No, absolutely, Jim. No, I think you're spot on again. It's really, I think, developing relationships as well, but I would agree with your closing that, we need to engage the manufacturers and have them be a part of the process, let them lead when they can, and offer support and solutions along the way. Because Jim, you probably have the statistics of how many small manufacturers in Illinois, but it's very large, and so dealing with those, they may not always have the resources, and that's where everybody has to step in and help.
Mike, do you want to say any last parting words on how to connect with employers?
No, I think I'd like to leave it with the employer final comment, because it's their demand that we're trying to meet, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you, though.
Great. Thank you so much to Steve Stewart from Excel Foundry, Mike Baker of DCEO, and Jim Nelson of the Illinois Manufacturers Association for participating in our webinar today. I'd also like to thank Chelsea Jones, Jean Kitchens, Lacey Pollock, Natasha Telger, and from